start by introducing Natalie. I had the privilege of meeting Natalie 5 years ago when she visited India. That was her second trip to India. And we hosted her one-day training program in Mumbai. And likewise here, we had a huge set of people that came for participants that came for this workshop. Her program is extremely easy to follow as long as you do the protocol, as long as we follow the instructions. It's very extremely easy, and you get results within a few months, and such amazing results that it is astonishing. It is amazing, and it is truly wonderful to see that with our children. She's a national and an international speaker on topics of teaching, reading to learners with Down syndrome and other developmental disorders since 1992. Natalie has inspired audiences across the country as well as across Atlantic in India, Bulgaria, and other northern borders of Canada. Known as an inspiring and practical speaker, Natalie has the intent on firing up her audience and a can-do attitude, which she's going to make sure that we all go with today. Her belief that children, even teens or adults with special needs can learn, it is contagious, and especially when the best practices are outlined and effective resources are given. So dear participants, please welcome Natalie Hale here today for this workshop. Very simple rules for all the newcomers. All participants will be on mute. Try to keep your videos off so that you can make sure that you have good bandwidth to listen to Natalie. Please make sure do not do personal chats on the chat area. Use the chat area to put your questions. After the presentation is over, I'll make sure that we ask those questions to Natalie, and then also make sure that those questions are related to the topic we have today. It's about teaching reading successfully. Thank you so much, and over to you, Natalie.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for having me. This is the fastest I've ever flown to India. Much less stressful. This is great. Thank you so much. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So we can get started. All right. So I've given it an umbrella term of developmental delays so that it can include just about everything that you're having to deal with. Most of my work is with Down syndrome and the dual diagnosis of Down syndrome / autism, or ASD. But as you all know, there's so many crossover learning weaknesses that this is a very global approach. This is a broad approach that works with all of those. Now, this book I want to encourage you to get. It's even in an ebook form on Amazon. I have a wonderful publisher, Woodbine House Publishing. This is the book that explains very succinctly and in a very reader-friendly manner the whole program, the whole approach to what we now know is the fastest way and the most successful way to teach reading to our kids with Down syndrome and other delays. So I say it's not your normal textbook because it's small and it's very reader-friendly. So, and of course it's in paperback, but also ebook. So I encourage you very much to get that in one form or another, because typically I give a full day workshop, and so we've got like 40, 50 minutes. So I'm just going to be hitting the broad topics, right? But all of the details are in here, in this book. So what our concern is, how are we going to get there the fastest and with the most success, right? So what approach is going to work? So my approach is we go in through the heart and teach to the brain. In through the heart and teach to the brain. And I'll explain what I mean by that. If we do that, we're going to get there the fastest way possible. So in through the heart, teach to the brain. We've got actually 3 elements going here. We have to engage. That's what I mean by going in through the heart. And that means that in the beginning of the reading journey, we only use materials that float their boats, that they just love, that, fire their jets, rock their socks. Absolutely. It has to do with them. Me, things I love, things I know. And the second is we have to pay attention to how the brain learns, how the brain can perceive. That's the number one step. And is it retaining it? How is it retaining it? How can we get it to retain it faster? And the third part is whatever approach we need, whatever reading program we use, has to qualify that student in the mainstream classroom. In other words, they have to learn the required word lists, the high frequency word lists, the words they're going to read most often their entire lives. So, engage, we do that with high interest materials. Retain, we use right hemisphere learning techniques, which we'll get into. And qualify, we need to teach those word lists and comprehension. All right. So later on, I'm going to show you how the program that I've designed, which is called Special Reads for Special Needs, and the website is specialreads, reads.com. So I've done all I can to provide the basics of what you need, and then you can add on to that. Add on personal pages, personal books, personal lotto games, and modified books. By modified books, I mean super popular books very often are built around movies and that sort of thing, kid favorite topics that you then modify. All right, as far as the methods go, we are going to talk about this. For the brain, fast flash, visual design is super important. Task size is small. Frequency. The brain learns by learning it frequently. And then duration. Duration meaning we're going to have teaching units of a short period of time because we don't want to lose focus or attention. All right, so as far as qualifying, what I've done is designed an entire series of books that teach the very first, second, and third levels of high frequency words as we use them in the English language. And then what I've done is designed 3 comprehension level books. It's a series that builds on these. So whichever these stories were, they are going to be included in here. And I give full instructions on everything. And then this book is included as well. All right. So what's step 1? We used to think letter names. Nah, not anymore. Everyone, all the at least globally between the UK and us, and hopefully in India as well, letter sounds come first. Why? Because, for instance, if I'm teaching you, you're 4 years old, and I'm teaching you the alphabet, and I teach you W, and I say, I'm holding up the card. What is this? Is this so? All I see, I'm the kid, all I see is a black squiggly line, which means nothing at all to me. All right, and you're telling me it's W. And I have Down syndrome, so I have a short auditory working memory. So you tell me, what is this letter? And I say U. That's what you said. You said W. Now, on the other hand, if I hold up the sign, the card, and I say, this is W, then not only is that incredibly easier to reproduce, but I've just given you a decoding clout. So now we teach the sounds first. The letter names come easily later, but this is our focus. And just for fun, I want to show you, for years I've been teaching about W. I just used W as an example. And then on YouTube, I found this amazing little video.
Say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, Good job! X, Y, Z. Yay! Good job, John.
Okay, so That proves my point. Like I said, for years I've been using W as an example. All right, so step 2, what are the basic rules for teaching? This is just across the board when we're talking about special needs. All right, first of all, I have to move my little box here so I can see. I guess that's not going to move. Here we go. There we go. Number 1, start with what they love, make it interesting, make it easy on the brain. We go in through the heart and teach to the brain. Let them read what they love until they launch. And what I mean by that, by launching, is a pretty serious term for me. It means they're launched as an independent reader. Once they're really rocking along and they're really catching on, then you can branch out, and then you have to introduce the school topics and all sorts of other things. But until they are really hooked, let them read what they love. All right, so don't bore them. Keep it fresh. I give the metaphor of a deck of cards. You're shuffling a deck of cards. You need lots of different materials. You need, hopefully, books like mine, like the spaghetti book or the I Want Pizza book, then personal books, then personal lottos, then the I See, I Love, I See, Like, I Said books from my high frequency word series. All of these have to be mixed together. You have to keep it fresh. All right, and then stick to this, what I call the special ed 3, small task size, frequency, short duration of sessions. Now, as far as frequency goes, I have a reading prescription, 5 minutes twice a day, especially for parents who feel just overloaded with so many obligations. 5 minutes twice a day does for the brain what 1 hour a week would never, ever do. So it's just like riding a bike, learning to play the piano. Reading is the same. Frequency, frequency, repetition, repetition, repetition. Short duration of sessions. Because you always want to quit the session before they're ready to quit. Just before they're ready to quit. Leave them wanting more. All right, methodology. 5 minutes twice a day. Now, do you stick with 5 minutes? No. As they become successful and they start retaining words, then of course you're going to take those words out, put a new word in. But as that goes along, the time is naturally going to expand. Then it'll be 10 minutes twice a day, and then 15 minutes twice a day. Why? Because they're enthusiastic, because they're experiencing success, which makes them feel really good about the whole process, and they are enthusiastic, and you can stretch out the time. All right, fast flash technique, we're going to talk about that. That is for learning vocabulary, and that is the primo right hemisphere learning technique. It's got not only the repetition, but it's got the speed, and we'll talk about that more. Sandwich style teaching with all materials. Sandwich style, and I'll repeat this, but sandwich style is you fast flash, just a group of five cards. You can have more than one group, but you're going to do 5 cards 3 times. Read the book, flash the cards. That's the sandwich. So the bread is the fast flashing, and then the peanut butter and jelly, or whatever it is in the middle, is the material that you're reading, which is high interest for the child. All right. Analytic phonics, not synthetic phonics. And I know many of you are required to teach synthetic phonics, but I'll give you an argument that hopefully you can use later on. Brain design, clarity, whatever they look at in that, whatever material you're presenting to them has to have extreme clarity, very large font size, lots of white space, no conflicting, like where do I look? The brain has to know exactly where you want it to look. And we can help that happen with our design of the printed page, no matter what it is. All right, 5 minutes twice a day. So how are you going to do that? What are you going to do? Select your material. Of course, you're all prepared ahead of time. So gather the related flashcards in groups of 5. Related flashcards. We never, ever teach random words random high frequency words, a and the, in, into, meaningless words for our children. That is absolutely the last thing we want to do. We teach those boring, meaningless words by hooking them together in a meaningful sentence or a meaningful book, etc. Anyway, you're going to gather the flash words, 5 cards from words that are in the material, whatever you're going to read. It always relates to what you're going to read. It never relates, it's never unrelating to what you're reading. Then you're going to fast flash each group. Start with just one group for a beginning reader. Then you can add a second group. But you're not flashing 10 at a time. You're doing 5. Typically, our kids with developmental delays have 5 comfortable working channels, working memory channels. So if they can hold 5 pieces of information, that's not going to stress them. We can even do 6 sometimes, especially when you're working with a lotto game of 6 pictures, 6 words. You're going to do it 3 times rapidly, and I'll show you how. 1 or 2 cards per second. If you can get to 2 cards per second, that's fabulous. Now, the child does not repeat the word. Very, very important for 2 reasons. One is you're going too slow if they have time to repeat the word. But the second reason is we want, there's a particular study that was done on input, okay, of all the sensory input. How much can the brain, how many of those channels can the brain actually process? So we're making it very, very small. I want their eyes and their ears. I do not want their mouths. I do not want them struggling with articulation or trying to do language. We're just eyes and ears. That's it. That's it when it comes to getting that vocabulary in the brain. All right. Then you read the book or the material, and then you fast flash again, and then high 5. Now, if the child does not, or teen, does not know letter sounds, then in this 5 minutes, include 3 letter sounds. Just start at the beginning of the alphabet, ABC this week, next week the next 3, and when you get to the end, start all over again and coach those same sounds again until the sounds are learned, and then of course you're just doing a few sounds. All right, so fast flash. Groups of 5, I explained why. Fast flash each group 3 times quickly, 1 or 2 cards per second. Start with one group, add a second or third in time. Now, as they learn a word, pull it out and put a new one in. Also, a good tip is in that group of 5, try to have at least 2 high interest words. All right, so Frozen, for example, the Frozen movie. If you're going to be teaching snow, cold, in, also have things like Elsa, who is it, Sven, names that are going to hold their attention. So they're going to be like this, waiting for those really cool names to appear. All right. So here's what Fast Flash looks like. This is one of my students, and I admit he's like the ideal student. Why do you think I picked him for this video? But he's like all eyes, which is fantastic. And he doesn't ever try to repeat because I've trained him. All right.
You ready? Okay. Want pizza? No. Yum. Yes. Want pizza? No. Yum. Yes. Want pizza? No. Yum. Yes. Awesome. You watched so well. Thank you.
All right, and if you have any questions about that, put them in the chat box because that is different than probably you have typically seen flashcards used. But just as a little digression, this technique has been around since the early 50s, extremely well researched. But all of this right hemisphere learning. In fact, there's schools that actually started in the United States and then Japan and then Australia. Now it's around the world, but somehow, for some reason, it doesn't find its way into our school systems. I don't know about yours. And I've often wondered, is that because it's free? It doesn't cost anything? Anyway, all right. So what sandwich style teaching? Let's talk about that. So this is so simple. Fast flash, read the book that relates to the cards. Fast flash, that's it. And it doesn't matter what reading material you're using. It doesn't matter. You use sandwich style teaching every time. But why? Because the brain loves it. That's how the brain likes to learn. By the way, as far as the speed, if you can get it to 2 per second, the study of neurology has come a really long way, and now there's even learning neurology. The whole focus is on how does the brain learn, how does the brain learn language, and what we're told by the scientists is that the speed, not only does the brain love to learn quickly, that's how it loves to learn, but the information that passes across a neuron can get up to 200 miles an hour. That is speed. Now, let me give a little plug for repetition. Every time a bit of information, that same piece of information, travels across a neural pathway, it thickens the myelin sheath, which encases the neuron. Now, every time it gets thicker, 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 what happens then is it goes faster. And eventually it's permanent, just like riding a bike. So the important thing, when we're teaching reading, I hear this so often. Well, on Monday she knew these words, and on Wednesday she had never seen them before in her life. I don't get it. That's normal. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. We keep at it until it is permanent. And a lot of it has to do with the brain and what's actually happening in the brain. So we keep going until it's done. With my own son, I started teaching him. He has Down syndrome and severe ADHD and ODD, oppositional defiant disorder. And I started with him when he was 4.5. And by the time he was 8.5, my job was just totally over. He was an independent reader. And I never taught him to read again. And that's a whole nother story, which I usually tell in the all-day seminars. But he learned only with letter sounds and personal books, because way back in 1989, there were no books like I produce now. Nothing that met his brain needs and his personal interests. So here we go. Putting it all together. This is one of the moms who attended one of my webinars in Silicon Valley, and this is her little girl. She's a doctor at a children's hospital, and boy, she just took on this job with combat boots, as we say. So she sent me a video of her working with her daughter, and you'll also see in the video, not only will you see fast flash, and she's really practiced, so she's very, very fast, but you'll also see the sandwich style teaching. She's flashing, then she reads a personal book. They don't show the end of the video when she's flashing again, but you just know that that's what happens at the end. And also you see the personal book that she's created according to the instructions that I give in my book, Whole Child Reading. So you see a lot in this little short video.
Slide, climb, swing, on, park. Slide, climb, swing, on, park. Slide, climb, swing, on, park. Okay, Anna, you read.
The park. I can think of the park.
Good job.
Now the text
I'm
comes
getting
first.
ready.
The text comes first, no pictures.
Swing at the park.
Same sentence with a nice big picture.
I can fly at the park.
No picture.
I can fly at the park.
Good job. Okay, Eo.
All right.
Slide.
All right. So you might have questions about that, but she did a beautiful job with the personal book. Huge type, double spacing between every word, and the sentence is all by itself, so the child is either reading or not reading. There is no picture cue. Picture cues are great for kids who are typically developing. Typically, they're great. But with our children, it's such a distraction, and the picture is so much easier to look at than those little black squiggly lines that I'm supposed to read and figure out. So we keep it separate. They read the sentence first, turn the page, then they get this big reward of a nice big picture, and then they read the same sentence underneath again. It's a really, really wonderful method and way of teaching, so that not only are you creating this wonderful personal book about that child, but you're also creating a testing tool. So, all right, about analytic phonics. Tell me about that. Why do I say teach with analytic phonics, not synthetic phonics? In the first place, what are those two? Analytic phonics works from the whole to the part, from the meaningful word to the parts that make up that word. So the child is first taught the word itself, and always within a context. So it's a personal book, for example. So after, for instance, maybe the child loves bananas, so you've made a personal book about bananas. So after she knows the word banana, she can read it, she can generalize it, she can read it anywhere. Then you're going to break it up for her, how that's put together, ba-na-na, for example. Now, synthetic phonics, which is probably what most schools use, works from the meaningless part, digraphs, diphthongs, blends, etc., to the whole. So the children have to learn ch, sh, etc. first, which means absolutely nothing to our kids with Down syndrome and other delays, and then they're put into words. So why doesn't this work very well with our kids? Why do I recommend analytic phonics? All right, just across the board, typically, and I'm most specifically familiar with Down syndrome, okay? So this is straight out of the Down syndrome handbook, but it applies across the board to many other difficulties as well, right? Difficulty discriminating sounds, poor short-term memory. I can't hold that in my memory. I can't hold the order in my memory. Fluctuating hearing loss throughout life. Did I say poor short-term memory? Yes, I did. Okay. Deficits in auditory processing. This is a huge problem, and it impacts, of course, phonological awareness. So I can't discriminate the sounds very well, I can't blend sounds very well, and I can't remember the order of the sounds very well. So analytic phonics avoids all of this. So designing your materials. How do you design your own materials so that the brain sees it and retains it? All right, I've touched on this already, but here's a visual. Now you're 5 years old. Just use your 5-year-old brain, and you don't know how to read, and I'm putting this in front of you. Now I fast flash, so I've given you some words, and then I put that in front of you, and my 5-year-old brain is going, what? However, if I put this in front of you, you have a very different response to this. First of all, you're crazy about Anna, so, oh, wow, I see that twice, okay. And, oh, no, is a good one. That's what I'd call a hot words, you know. And then all I have left is 2 words. Wow, oh, and look at the pictures. This is so cool. So notice and in this case, we are using pictures. This is not the first step. We're gone on a little further with that. And of course, this is modifying trade books. You want the child to be able to read books that look exactly like what their friends are reading, but these are books they can read themselves. So try one of the top bits of advice that I can give you as teachers, whether you're a parent teacher or a professional teacher, is get inside the eyes of the child. Get inside the brain and eyes of the child. Use your intuition. What can that particular child see? What is going to turn them off and make them afraid and get what I call FOF syndrome? Fear of failure syndrome. I made it up. It's not a real syndrome, but it's a real thing. And if we put something in front of the kids that is just overwhelming and it's just too hard, it's too much, then we're either going to get it too hard or we're going to get a nonverbal complete shutdown. All kinds of variations. There are all kinds of ways of saying, I'm not going to do this. So hopefully you can see what I mean there. Okay, what did you notice? The size of the page and the font. Font is large. White space. I increase the white space by just, limiting the text. Limited information on the page. Clarity and simplicity. And a sans serif font. Sans serif. There are many, many, many sans serif fonts, and most of what you're going to see on the internet is done in sans serif. So what you're seeing on the page right here on this slide, that's sans serif. There are no curly cues on the end, and there are tons and tons of sans serif fonts for you to choose from. I do have a favorite, PT sans, caption. I forgot the last word. PT, just letter P, letter T, sans, S-A-N-S, caption, C-A-P-T-I-O-N. The reason I like it is that the capital I has a crossbar top and bottom, so you know it's not a number one. The child knows it's not number one. It's not a lowercase l. That's I. That's capital I. And the other thing that it has that I love is on the lowercase l, there's a tiny little curve at the bottom. So PT Sans Caption. If you're creating your own materials, I highly recommend you use that font. All right, and then double space between words. Some of you may remember the Peter and Jane series from the UK. I actually got some of their books off of Amazon. We had Dick and Jane, big series. They had Peter and Jane. So I got some of their beginning readers of Peter and Jane. And they didn't have double space between the words. They had 3 or 4 spaces between every word. They knew what they were doing, and they used a sans serif font. Here in the US, we didn't do so great on spacing, and we used a serif font with the little curly cues on the end of every letter. So, Peter and Jane, some of you I'm sure remember. All right, so this is my website where you can find all my materials, and I want to show you how I used what I'm teaching. I used that in my materials. So this is book 1 of the high frequency word series, the words they have to learn. So what did I do? I used white space. These are really low interest words, high frequency, low interest. So I am definitely using illustrations as far as that goes. So then the next page is I see a big monkey and you have a huge monkey, etc. So double spacing, see that? Sans serif type, not much on the page, huge white space. So the brain knows where to go. When they turn the page, bam, they're going to see the monkey, but then they're going to immediately drop down to something that does not look too complex. Now, if you have a child with serious delays, you cover up for instance, if you're using this, you cover up the bottom 2 lines. I always keep a laminated sheet of white paper, several sizes, some bigger than others, and I just slap it down, cover it up. And then when they get to the second line, I would also cover the top and the bottom. Particularly with the child with autism, this has worked really well to just avoid all these distractions. All right. So even this is the next level of my materials. This is the primer level. The first one was the emergent or pre-primer level. So I've got a lot more on the page, but I'm still using the same methodology. White space, double spacing between the words, sans serif font. Of course, now this type is getting smaller. It gets smaller and smaller as you go. This is the first grade level. Still keeping the same methodology, and I break it up like crazy. In these first grade books that I've designed, there are just pictures everywhere. You never want to give them a page of type because you're going to get FOF syndrome, fear of failure syndrome. And they're going to shut down. No, I can't do this. This is too hard. All right. All right, why is this not going? I'm not sure. Oh, that's why. All right. So there's one tool I didn't put in the book, and I want to teach it to you right now. Personal pages. Personal books, that's in the book. That's in Whole Child Reading textbook. When I say the book, that's what I'm talking about, is Whole Child Reading. Personal pages, I was still working on this as a tool, and so I didn't put it in the book. I've got tons of blogs on it on my website, so you can read about it there. I've also got YouTube video on it. So here's what it is quickly. It takes you 5 minutes to create it with a student. All right. It's a super, super motivator. Wait, let me go back to this one. This boy can read at about a first grade level. He's 15, I think, Down syndrome. And his desperate mother brought him in because she said he won't read. He can read. He's not the slightest bit interested, and I can't get him to read. So one of the first things I did was write this personal page for him. Now, he's a more advanced reader. You can see it's this much smaller type. You can also probably see that I still have big spaces between the words. Does he love reading this page? Oh my goodness, yes. It's about Marianne, his beautiful girlfriend that he intends to marry. See? Go in through the heart and teach to the brain. So he was like on it. All right, so I offer the kids colors. Okay, what color do you want your story today? And let them pick the color, but I do the writing. The kids can give you the idea maybe. Some are nonverbal. You can get an idea from the parent. Or just something that you know that's happening or something they love. For instance, this kid, my horse watch. Okay, he's crazy about horses and he had a horse watch. Easy to pick up on things. It's fast, easy, kids love it. You can use it at home. When I would create a page, I'd make a photocopy, send the color copy home with the child with the assignment that he had to read that to somebody in his family every single day. I also encourage the mother to send a copy into the school. And then you keep that in a 3-ring binder. And you've got a vocabulary review tool. It's fantastic. And do you make flashcards for the new words in that page? You bet. You bet. We're always teaching with Fast Flash. All right. So this last item is important. Terrific tool for generalizing vocabulary. You know, our kids, unfortunately, especially kids with Down syndrome, are fabulous memorizers. They're not really reading sometimes, but they've memorized everything on that page because it's got this picture, etc. So how do you know? You have to help them generalize. And this is one fabulous, easy, fast way to do it. You don't even need a computer. So you know the words that you hope he's learned, and you write this little story and you put those words in there. All right. So 5 minutes, really, that's all it takes. And I have used this with kids who came in mad at their dad or mad or upset about this or that and the other. You start writing about how they're upset or how they're mad, and boy, they're with you in seconds. All right. So I want to show you how I have used this, and we talked about this before. All right, the bottom part, that white type, that's the stuff you do yourself. But here, when I created all of Jonathan, my son's books myself, when it came time to actually trying to design a program, I thought, what can I do to appeal to most, maybe 95% of students? Well, food. Favorite kid food. And admittedly, this is, Western food like spaghetti, pizza. Ice cream is pretty universal. So peanut butter, macaroni and macaroni and cheese, bologna, spaghetti. I want pizza. So my goal was to to hook, again, going in through the heart, to hook them with that. Okay. And we talked about this before. The methods. And all of this is detailed outline in the books. Comprehension evaluation and the whole high frequency series. All right. How are you going to learn these strategies? I keep talking about all this stuff. Fast Flash, visual design, task side, all of this, personal pages, Fast Flash, sandwich style teaching, all of this. Well, it's all, whoops, get back in there. They're all in the book. They're all in the book in detail. And it's a small book, so you won't be discouraged when you pick it up. All right. Now, with all of my reading bundles, what I do is give tons of instruction for the educator or the parent. Tons. So there's a quick start guide. For instance, on page 4 it says, what do I do first? I don't know. And of course, this is the textbook. And in here, the educator and parent guide, it's very detailed. It even has running records for the vocabulary for all of the high interest and high frequency vocabulary for every story in my entire series, whether it's the high interest books like spaghetti and pizza, or whether it's the high frequency books, I said, I see, look, all of that. This is just loaded. How do you design a teaching session? How much time do you have? Do you have 15 minutes? Do you have 45 minutes because you're doing a pull out from the classroom with a student? So it's all in there. There's also a scaffolding plan. Where do you start? How do you build? So tons of information. So I don't just throw out the program to you. All right. All right. Now I wanted to show you the interior of this. What I'm most excited about this whole comprehension evaluation series is it's nonverbal. The child needs no verbal ability whatsoever to take these tests all the way through. And of course, I encourage people to photocopy each page so that you can use this over and over. I'll show you the interior a little bit. So for instance, this is pre-primer level, this top up here. So the child first goes back and reads the book. So you will see in the booklet, okay, this relates to the IC book. All right. So then you would have the child read the book, and then the child silently reads this and circles the correct answer. All right. So just circles it, circles it. Then we get a little tiny bit more advanced. They have to make a mark on the correct answer. All right. Then we go to, this is the primer level down here, these two. And I deliberately get a little bit confusing here. I mean, a little more exacting. So they have to find the dog that's black and brown and white. So if they just know the word brown, they're liable to choose this. But if they're actually reading the sentence, they're going to get it right. So again, all right. Now, when we get to the first grade level, we take a big leap. And I recap the little part of the story right here for them. And then I color code who, what, when. All right? And then, well, there are 2 pages of this, 2 different, I didn't show it here, but 2 different exercises. And then you turn the page and you have no color coding at all. You have no help. So you have the same 2 tests, but no color coding. All right, so we take them step by step by step. And there's lots more to talk about comprehension, but not today. So you can see more, and you can see interior book pages of all my books. Just a few, you'll be able to see a couple of pages at my website, specialreads.com. Because if you're like me, I don't want to buy a book that I can't look in the inside. How big is the type? How much type is on the page? What level is my child really at? So, all right. So how to connect with me? I highly recommend you go to Facebook and go to Natalie Hale Down Syndrome and just like the page, and then you'll get all of my videos and things that I post there. Also YouTube, same title, Natalie Hale Down Syndrome. Right now on Facebook, I'm doing a weekly video series. I'm posting a very short video. I titled it 40 Seconds to Reading. Well, I didn't quite make it to 40 seconds. It's more like a minute, sometimes a minute and a half, but still very fast. And I just take one aspect of it at a time and talk to you about it. So that's on Facebook every Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock LA time, Los Angeles time. But if you miss it there, you can go on YouTube. I put it all up there. So it's in reverse order, of course, because I just put them up as I do it. So the most recent one will be like number 8 or whatever. So I've got 28 weeks planned. We've already filmed 16 weeks, and I've already put up 7. So 1 a week. And then at the bottom, I have peruse my site's blog page. Use the search box. There's a search box right on the blog page. Just type in what you want, comprehension, whatever, personal books, and then all the articles will pop up for you. So, oops, let's go back to, all right. So I guess I can stop my screen share. All right.
Everyone, if you all have questions, let us know in the chat box. I will ask those questions. Is it okay if we use digital formats for flashcards and books in Word and PDF format? Or is it necessary to use a printed version and have it on paper?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. If you're going to use a tablet for flashcards, first of all, I recommend you don't. You know, the best is, first of all, you've got to be across from the child for teaching because you have to watch the eyes. Where are the eyes? Oh, by the way, can you see me? Or because all I'm seeing is you. What is everybody else seeing, Jasmeet?
So they might have pinned your video and they would be able to see. And so I have pinned your video, so I'm able to see you.
Oh, okay, good. Because all I can see, usually when I'm talking, my picture pops up and it's not doing that.
So what you can do is just change the speaker view. You'll be able to see others as well.
Okay. All right. All right. So, sitting across from the child, you want to watch the eyes because the eyes could be who knows where, all right? So my recommendation is not alongside, but across from the child. Now, the other thing is if you're using a neuro-linguistic programming says the very best position for the child's eyes to be in to retain that information is just above horizon. If you've got a tablet down here, you're not making that work at all. So now, if you want to hold the tablet up kind of in front of your face and do it, but you know, that gets super complicated. The other thing is there are some, if you absolutely want to do tablet, because it's labor intensive to make the cards, I don't know. But there are some apps that enable you to correct the speed, to choose your own speed. It's not as fast as I would like. I did find some of those. It was one of those. It's not as fast as I would like. It's not ideal, but it's pretty good. So if you absolutely cannot create real flashcards, then figure out a way to use the tablet, but you have to be watching where the child's eyes are. All right? All right. Also, you've got to call out the words. So how are you going to do that? You'd have to be sitting next to the child. It's a poor substitute, but if it's that or nothing, then go ahead and do it. Right.
Thanks, Nishita, for asking that question. Prachi is a parent of a child with autism. She's asking, ma'am, does this strategy, do we use high frequency words only or do we use CVC words too?
Don't even worry about CVC right now. What you want to do is use words that are built into something the child loves. That just takes care of your problem. Don't concentrate. Why should we concentrate on CVC words? I realize I'm preaching a different a different story here, but everything has to do with something the child is interested in. CVC words will naturally come in to reading material that's built around what the child loves, all right? Maybe loves cats, dogs, whatever. Don't worry about that. And you're going to be teaching high interest words. That's your number one. High interest words. All right. Mama, daddy, whatever it is, all the favorite things, you know, movies, iPad. You can write a personal book about the child's iPad and get them off the iPad because you're reading a book about how much they love the iPad, right? All right. And I'm going to quote Sue Buckley here. I was going over some notes from attending one of her webinars here in California about 5 or 6 years ago, and she said, and I quote, and I told her this later, she said, I really said that? I said, yeah, I was taking verbatim notes. She said, to teach high-frequency words in isolation is stupid. She actually said that. And I totally concur. It doesn't relate. It has to relate. And if I can tell a real quick story, my son, like I said, all his only reading materials were personal books about his trains, his drums, his sister, his this, that, and the other. All right, so he's an independent reader by the time he's about 8 and a half. Fast forward, he's 16 years old. We go to The Lion King on Broadway in the theater, and I bought him the big program guide with the tiny, tiny little print that gives the background on all the artists and all that. So intermission comes. His dad and his sister and I go out to get something to drink. I said, Jonathan, you want to come get something? No, 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 no. He's got his face buried in the book. No, 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 no. I said, fine, fine. So he's reading while we're chugging, pop. On the way home, his dad and his sister and I are talking about Scar, the character. Oh, man, wasn't he great? Oh, yeah, he was terrific. And Jonathan pipes up from the back seat and he says, yeah, Scar was played by Patrick Page, and he also did Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. And the rest of us are going, he was studying the program guide. He was interested in that. That's how he learned to read. So he grew up thinking reading was for meaning. Reading is for meaning. Reading is for meaning. Reading is to find out what's in the book. It's not about learning to decode. They learn to decode, but it's not about that. It's about the excitement of what's in the book. So that's why we have to go in through the heart. It'll happen naturally. We use high frequency words, CVC words, kind of accidentally. We want to make it appear, oh, it's sort of accidentally. They're connecting words that connect all these really cool words. Long answer.
So maybe, Natalie, we could use CVC words coming in between the interest of what they have. So let's say if a child is interested in cars, and you could just put in among the 5 words one CVC word, which would help him read better because he collects that information, right? His brain is learning.
Yes. But you always wanted to relate to, so you're going to write a book about about cars.
Yeah. That is true. Okay. Shruti asks a question. My son reads very well, comprehends about 50% of it. He's on the spectrum. How should I make him learn the hidden learning in the stories he reads?
Okay, this is really tough. Because when we're talking about comprehension, there are 2 kinds. There's referential comprehension, so he can refer back to the text and find the answer. But I think what your attendee is talking about is inferential comprehension, which is somehow, but the answer is not clearly in the text. You have to infer it from the different things that you read about. So that's much more difficult. And I do have a book to recommend. It is called Strategies That Work 3. It's the 3rd edition. It's on Amazon by Harvey and Goodvis. Now, it's a big, thick thing like that. It's a manual. It's more like a manual, but it's loaded with all kinds of comprehension tips. But one thing I want to say that we try to practice with Down syndrome is the child or teen or whatever needs to be very, very familiar with the story. The story needs to be a known story, read again and again and again. All right, does that make sense? And it has to be a known topic. You're not going to be reading a medical journal. All right, it has to be a topic that's familiar, and then the story has to be familiar. And one thing that Subhati suggests is have the child say, this is known, right? But have a child read a paragraph, for example, aloud once. Have them read the paragraph silently to themselves several more times, and then go after the comprehension questions. All right. Now, for those, I'll answer a simpler question. For referential comprehension, which is not what this parent or teacher is talking about, but for referring, the WH questions. What she's talking about is why. Okay, so that's an inferential question. But where, who, where, when? The WH questions, which are referential, you can go back and find it. We backload the sentence that we're giving them. For example, Jeremy is eating pizza. What is Jeremy eating? Pizza. I heard that last. My auditory memory is short term, so I am going to remember that last. So Jeremy is eating pizza at the table. Where is Jeremy eating pizza? At the table. Ooh. And then we build their confidence that way, and they get used to, oh yeah, the answer was right back there. And then as they get more experience, then you're going to mix up the order. But drilling, lots of drilling with those.
Yes. Amrita is asking, she would like to understand what is the intention and logic behind flashing the card so fast. She felt that it was too fast for her.
Yes, it has to do with brain research. And there's a school of thought, like I mentioned, that's been around since the 1950s, right hemisphere learning. There are scientists and educators and neurologists who have studied how the brain learns most rapidly and how it can retain it the best. That's where this came from. It's been practiced for decades and decades. And if any of you have heard of the NACD, the National Association for Child Development, which is here in the US, but I know I've talked to some Indian moms when I was in India who have come here just for that, because they do phenomenal work with our kids with disabilities. And they have used that from the get-go, because it was first taught by Glenn Dolman, and then his nephew, Bob Dolman, founded the NACD, and used these right hemisphere techniques. The reason they're used is that they work. They work spectacularly. It's amazing. It's just amazing. If you don't believe it, try it. And I've had educators write me after a workshop and say, well, I went back to my school and I told my colleagues what I was going to do, and they said, oh, yeah, like that's going to work? And she said 6 weeks later, all my kids know 15 brand new words, and I'd been trying for a year and I couldn't get them to learn anything. So she said, now my colleagues are saying, wow, that really works. So don't believe me, just try it.
So Aarti is asking, is it okay to use 4 or 5 words in a flashcard?
Sure. 4 or 5 words. Five is good. If you feel like the child can't handle that, then go to 4. Is that what she's asking?
Yeah, she's asking whether it has to be always 5 or it can be 4 or 5 words.
4 or 5 is fine. I wouldn't go much past 6, all right, because that gets that's a little too much. But we use 6 a lot because of lotto games.
Mehek asks, so do we not teach individual sounds at all for all the vocabulary?
Individual sounds?
As in the phonics, as in the sounds of the alphabets?
I said that's first. You do that first. That's your first step, is sounds, the letter sounds, all the letter sounds. That's first. You do that right before you start anything. Yeah.
Can you briefly describe your experience with flashcards with learners with autism? Typically, we always show them pictures with the words since they are visual learners. I have never tried something like this. It seems very interesting.
Yes, they are visual learners, but guess what? A word is a visual thing. If we're giving them a card, I know the cards you're talking about. Schools use them here. Everybody uses them here, except right hemisphere people. You're showing them a card. What are they going to look at? Yeah, okay, maybe they're brilliant. They can take it in too, but they're taking those in differently. The brain is going to recognize the word differently and with more difficulty than the picture. All I can say is try it. Just try it. Just the word. Now you're using something known. If you're teaching them something that they've never heard of, you're going to want to have a picture, but that's not how you're going to be teaching them to read that word. You might be teaching them to identify, but not to read the word. All I can say is just try it. And with children with autism, there are really important tips in your environment. I would always dim the lights, no fluorescent lights, just 1 or 2 incandescent lights. Sometimes I would turn the lights off entirely and have them use a little flashlight pen. Anything that they're visually very distracted. They're strong visual learners, so let's help them out. But they're also visually distracted. If there's a tiny light up here, I'm going to be looking at that, and I'm not looking at what you're trying to tell me. So because it's too much information, it's too much visual information coming in. So just try it and see how fast they pick up those words if it's just the word. But it has to be large, all right? The flashcards are large.
So you talked about the font. Can you just repeat it again? What was the font that you talked about?
PT, letter P, letter T, sans, S-A-N-S, means without, caption, C-A-P-T-I-O-N.
Okay, thank you. Because one of them had asked that question.
Yeah.
How can we help a child who cannot understand phonics or who's not able to articulate the phonics alphabet sounds?
Can you ask that person what is the special need?
Can you please come back and let me know what it is? We'll take this question up again. The next question is by Shreya. My daughter is 9 months old. I did fast flash, but she's not interested in only text. Should I add pictures or will it be too distracting?
She's not interested in what? I couldn't hear that word.
She's not interested in looking at text.
Should I add
a text?
Yeah.
So should
Not
I add pictures?
Not at that age. What you want to do at that age is just focus on pictures. Have her match picture to picture. You know, the UK, the Down Syndrome Education International has a really great See and Learn set. It's just picture-based, and they're going to be matching picture to picture. That's where you want to be at 9 months. Picture to picture. Yeah.
Priyanka is asking, could you name the book that you talked about, Strategies for...
I'll say it again, yeah. Strategies That Work 3, meaning it'll be the third edition. Strategies That Work by Harvey, Harvey, and Goudvis, Goudvis. Like I say, it's on Amazon. It's a big book. You could spend the rest of your life using comprehension techniques from that book.
So what is the current age that we'll start working with children for reading?
Generally, I think you could actually start, well, you can start at 9 months with pictures, just learning what that picture is, a doll, or, milk, whatever it is, learning that that's what that is. So you're getting the auditory with the picture and then having the child match picture to picture. But as far as, I would say 3.5 to 4 years, depending on the child, every child is so different. But you could actually I would start with personal books at about 3.5 or 4, and it would just be, for instance, first page, and I'll just use our language. Mama, that's it on the page, Mama. I'm 3 years old, all right, 3.5. Turn the page, big picture of Mama underneath. Turn the page, Daddy, Nana, etc., etc., etc. Fabulous personal book for a 3-year-old. And then you've got huge flashcards. When I started with Jonathan, I followed the book exactly. Glenn Doman's book, How to Teach Your Baby to Read. Sure, most of you know about that. And my flashcards were made out of poster board, this big, Well, he paid attention. And in big fat red marker.
So somebody had a question that, is there any relevance to a blue color for your print? I think one of your textbook had a blue color. So the question was, is the blue color relevant? Is there any relevance to the color of the text that we show in the flashcard?
It may look blue on the screen. I only use black.
Okay.
I only use black text. And everything that we do, why do I use black text only? Because that's what they're going to read the rest of their lives. Everything that I do, uppercase and lowercase, just teach lowercase as far as reading goes, unless it's a proper name. Wherever a capital needs to be, put that in there. Otherwise, lowercase. It's amazing. They have no trouble at all segueing into uppercase later. Once they know the lowercase, it's not even an effort for them, which surprises me. I didn't know that before it happened. But anyway.
What should be the ideal size of the card? Example, the font size. What size should it be?
Font size, at least 90 or 100. Now, the Glenn Doman approach is 2 inches high for lowercase, 2 inches. So that's why I was using big cards, especially for a little one. For any child under the age of 3.5, I'd be using massive cards, which means, cutting up poster board and using a big fat red marker. Yeah, 2 inches high for little ones. Then once they start catching on, it's amazing how fast they come down in type size. It's like, oh, I get it. It's once they get it, no problem.
Yeah. So Anita asks, have you come across any instances where they are just not interested in reading?
Oh yeah, all the time. I only get students who are not interested. I only get the tougher cases mostly, you know. Yes, of course. That's why we go in through the heart and teach to the brain. You have to have both parts. So let's say I've created this really cool book about trains because my little boy loves trains. But I didn't learn about how the brain works. And so I didn't make flashcards, I didn't use Fast Flash and all of that. And he's just not picking up on it. No, he's not going to. You have to have both parts. You have to have material that he loves, and you have to pay attention to how the brain learns. Big type, big type, big type. All right, to begin with.
Thanks, Natalie. Amrita is asking, would you recommend this technique for specific learning disabilities? Because this is dramatically opposite of other programs.
Of course, it's dramatically. All right, so here's my advice. If those other programs are working beautifully for those kids with special needs, keep using them. If not, try this. This has been proven for decades and decades and decades. It's just that the word has not gotten around, certainly not into our school systems. I'll tell you, it's very interesting. The people that are picking up on it, as far as me and my program goes, is Canada. It's just amazing. Canada, they love it. And it's very successful. So then one school tells another school, and they're off and running. But just try it. Don't believe me. Don't believe a word I say. Just read the book and try it.
And how do you work on pre-reading skills?
Pre-reading skills, the pictures, picture identification, and single words, single large words. Oh, let me get back to that question. I didn't really finish answering that previous question. It doesn't matter whether is it fetal alcohol syndrome, is it Down syndrome, is it ASD, what is it? Is it PDD-NOS? There are so many learning weaknesses that are common across the board that is, I think, one of the beauties of this approach and why it works so well for decades with these right hemisphere learning techniques. So just try it.
So Natalie, this question is from me.
Okay.
When a child is non-verbal, we're not going to get phonic output, so we are not aware that he understands phonics, these sounds. So could we start directly with the flashcard systems? That's what Glenn Doman program also recommends.
Oh yes, with nonverbal students, you're going to teach exactly the same. You're just going to test differently. You're going to be teaching the letter sounds. They have to know the letter sounds. They're not going to be able to read. Whether they can produce them or not is an entirely different thing. But we're going to test them differently. And I have a whole chapter in my book devoted to that. So we're going to test them by, they can sign, they can give any approximation. With my students, if they're reading the word pizza and they just go, the, and they're consistently using that sound every time they see that word, they're reading. I accept any consistent sound. They can sign, although our kids have get very creative with their signing, so sometimes it's hard to recognize. And then there are sentence strips where, and I have a video up on YouTube about that. So you scramble the cards of a sentence. It's all scrambled, and then you say the sentence out loud, and then you give them verbally each word that you want them to find. I just take a red strip of paper, and they have to find the right word, and they put it down, and they build a sentence that way. So we test differently, but the teaching is the same. And that's why I designed the comprehension books for nonverbal, so that kids who are nonverbal can use it as well.
So a parent is asking, how do you help a child who's unable to blend the second sound? So he keeps breaking the sound, like he would say ka, actor individually, but he can't blend it together.
You're talking about cat? You're talking about cat? I couldn't hear. Okay. Yeah, so I'll quote Sue Buckley again from her talk, from one of her conferences. She said, for a typically developing child, to put k, t together can take a year and a half or more to get that. Our kids are going to take a lot longer. And going back to the question that the mom asked who didn't come back, and we didn't hear from her again about her the age of the child. My child has difficulty blending. That is a real struggle for kids with Down syndrome. It just is. You keep at it. You teach them to read until they are decoding naturally. And one thing that Down's Ed International does say in one of their books, which is what happened to my son, is that if they can't take to traditional phonics teaching, once they become really good readers, they get to be about second and a half grade level, second and a half, third grade level, they're decoding. They picked it up. And my son was like that. Because he had tubes in his ears, he had personality issues that were never going to work with phonics. So I just kept it to sounds, letter sounds, and personal books, and that was it. That was it. And he was very successful. So yeah, so don't worry so much about the blending. Worry about them reading. Give them material that they're going to want to read, help their brains with the fast flash, and then go from there.
So the last question, Natalie, Sonia is asking, so please confirm the order to be followed. First, all the phonic sounds, and then 2 letters and 3 letter words, or can it be any number of letters words? Do we have some guidelines on that?
It can be 12 letter words. You know, one of my son's first words was electronics and locomotive. I mean, it happened to be what he was interested in. All right, so no, the order of learning. I'll say that again. Not phonic sounds. Letter sounds. Don't worry about all of the different synthetic phonic blends, etc. Don't worry about that now. Letter sounds, that's step 1. Step 2, go in through the heart with heart-centered materials. You have to create them yourself with whatever it has to do with the child, unless you get my program and they love food. So that's the second thing, is that you're going to create materials that they love. Then, before you introduce it to them, you're going to create flashcards, large flashcards that go with that material. Then you're going to sit and teach them, and you can show them the book. You want to read this? Oh, yeah. It's all about, your sister or whatever. So I'm going to show you the words in that book. And so you don't have to say anything. And I have to tell students who come in trained to say the word, say the word, say the word. I say, zip the lip. You just watched, zip the lip. All right, so, okay, I'm going to show you some of the words. The bam, 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 bam. Okay, now let's read the book. We read the book. Okay, let's look at the words again. Bam, 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 bam. Oh, that's it. And that whatever material you've created is like gold. So I would put it away, out of reach, until the student has learned to read it, and then it's theirs for life. It's their reward. They get to keep that book. So does that? So first, letter sounds. Don't worry about CBC words. That does not relate to their lives, unless it's a CBC word that does relate to their lives, like dog. That's fine. Whatever naturally occurs. The length of the word, it can be anything. You're learning by sight. And another thing that Sue Buckley said, Sue Buckley's in my mind because I was just rereading some notes. She said, all of us read by sight. The brain reads by sight. The brain does not read by phonics. We read by sight. Oh yeah, I know that word, yeah. Now, if it's a long medical word, we're going to read by phonics. We're going to break it down. But, okay, does that answer that, I hope?
And that's the last question. Does it work with children with cerebral palsy?
Any kind of developmental delay that makes it difficult to process and learn as a typical learner would learn, yes. Just simply try it. With every child, you're going to have to modify it to that child. What is going to work well and what is not. Go ahead.
So one of the participants has shared a comment. The technique you said about the whole word reading was tested in an Indian village population who had no knowledge of words or vocabulary. They learned reading in 6 months.
What a great way to end.
So I would request all the participants here, get your cameras on. Let Natalie see who all she's been talking to all this while. So Javed has one question. Is it essential to learn the spelling of the word?
Is it essential to learn the spelling?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a good question. And I've heard experts say it, so I'll repeat it. Reading is a brain function. Spelling is learned. It's drill. It's just drill, 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 drill. Particularly if you're talking about English. English is one of the most insane languages out there. There's so many exceptions to the rule. Like, that's another problem with synthetic phonics is, oh yeah, this is a rule, but yeah, it doesn't apply to dozens of words. Yeah, so it's drill. Now, fortunately, my son learned by drilling. But in third grade, he had a teacher who just drilled his spelling, so he's great with that. So that helps. But with English, it doesn't make sense. The spelling, you just have to learn it by rote.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Natalie, for spending this hour with us. It's been an amazing having you here again with us, though not physically, but you are there in all the ways that we could think of. Thank you so much.
I thank you, everyone, for coming.